Hi everybody, it's Janét Kniss. Welcome back to Lectin Free Solutions. I've got a good one for you today. This is an egg-free coffee cake muffin I think you're really going to enjoy. Well, let's go. This is an easy recipe that is done in two parts. There's a crumble top on top of the muffins, and we're going to make the crumble first and set it aside. It's super easy. Now, if there are any of the ingredients in here that you don't like, if you have a problem with walnuts, you can take the nuts out. You can substitute with another. If you don't like the coconut, that's also something you can eliminate. I've made this actually with just a totally plain crumble with the sweetener and the flour and the oil. So if you want it very simple, you can do that as well. So let me tell you what I have here. I've got a quarter of a teaspoon of cassava flour. I have a quarter of a teaspoon. I use bocha sweet in this, but you can use allulose. In the muffin, we're going to actually use half allulose and half bocha sweet. But use whichever one suits you the best. You can use Swerve, any of the compliant sweeteners is just fine. Okay, so we have the flour, the sweetener, and we're going to stir those together. This is a real quick little crumble top, and it's just enough to top the 8 muffins that this recipe makes. Then I've got in this bowl, I've got a teaspoon of cinnamon. I've got 3 teaspoons, I have 3 tablespoons of chopped walnuts, and I have 2 tablespoons of shredded unsweetened coconut. So we're going to add all of those into the crumble mix, and you can see it's going to be a fairly rough crumble. Then I'm going to add, now for me, you know that the recipes that I create are for my family that have heart disease and have the ApoE4 gene. So I don't use coconut, and I don't use coconut oil, and I don't use butter because of the saturated fat. So I use olive oil, and unfortunately we are also allergic to avocado oil. So that's a good sub if you don't want to use the olive oil. It has a little less flavor. So feel free to play around with that. But anyway, that's why you always see olive oil in almost all of my recipes, because that's what works for my family. All right, now what I'm going to do is, I like to use a fork for this the best. I'm going to put just a dab also of vanilla in here and just start incorporating the dry ingredients until we get a crumble texture. Usually this works out just how I like it, but every once in a while it'll be either too wet or too dry. So if it's too wet, just add a tiny bit more cassava. And if it's too dry, just add a little bit more olive oil. Now I'm going to finish off with a little bit more oil in here. I'll use that. And if you want to get it really, really nicely incorporated, just take a few minutes with it, and it all comes together. You just want to try and get all of those flour particles. In fact, I think it's quite easy just to get in there with your hands, and you can massage that oil into all the particles. Okay, that's it. It's very quick, and I'll give you a quick peek at what it looks like. It's basically like this. So this is going to be, this crumble is just going to be added onto the top of the muffins when we get them in the papers. So that's the next step. All right, now we're ready to mix up the batter for the muffins. What I have here is coconut flour. I used a half allulose and half bocha sweet. I have salt, baking powder. What else have I got in there? Xanthan and Bob's Red Mill egg replacers. So what I like to do with all of these things is run them through the sifter. I was trying to just use a whisk to mix the coconut flour. I've been making a lot of things with coconut flour lately, and I noticed that even though I thought I had it really smooth, I ended up with particles inside my baked goods that really, it's kind of like having baking soda, little pieces of baking soda, but it's not that. It's coconut that stays together, and you have these little balls. It's not a nice thing to have in your product. So I started sifting those things. It just takes a second to do. I have a sieve somewhere, couldn't find it, but today I have my regular old-fashioned sifter. So we're going to sift all those ingredients together. All right, now that the dry ingredients are all sifted together, we're going to start adding the wet ingredients. I didn't tell you what the proportions were, but you know what? It's all on the printed recipe at the end of the video. Not at the end, but you know, when you touch the little down arrow button, the recipe will come up there for you. And then it'll give you all the measurements that you need. Measurement and the cooking time and all of that is there. Okay, so that's coconut, full fat coconut. This is water because we have the Bob's Red Mill already sifted into the dry ingredients. I'm going to add that. We have vanilla and we have olive oil. We'll mix those all together. I'll tell you, when this is finished, every time I make these, it reminds me of just so you know that you're there. The consistency is almost like whipped potatoes. That's exactly what I think I have in my bowl when I'm finished with this. It's just what it looks like. Take your time getting it together because you've got that coconut flour and it's a little slow to incorporate all the fluid. So just give yourself a few minutes to get all those dry ingredients incorporated. Okay, that's it. We're there. And as you can see, like I mentioned, it looks like whipped potatoes. All right, now I told you in the beginning that this recipe makes eight muffins. So what I'm going to do is just go ahead and spoon one in for you so you don't have to be bored while I fill all of these cups up. And I'll show you exactly what I do. So I get a nice generous serving in there and I flatten it down just a little bit, not too much. Make sure it's full enough. And then I take another spoon. You can see about how much is in there. You just take the batter and divide it out equally among the 8 cups. And the same thing with the topper. So I just like to spoon this right on the top. I know it's going to take a little extra. And then I actually push it a little bit onto the batter. And that's all there is to it. Here. Then you're going to bake those at, you're going to bake them at 350 degrees for 10 minutes. Then you're going to turn the oven down to 300 and you're going to bake for another 20 minutes. Then do a toothpick test. And if it comes out clean, then they're done. They are coconut flour. So you have to be careful because it really does like to burn easily. So I've found that if I keep the temperature at too high, it gets too brown and it just doesn't taste as nice. So anyway, I hope you'll give this a try, and we're going to get these ready, put them in the oven, and then we'll cut them in the middle, cut one down the middle and show you how nice they are. Well, we're back. The muffins are all ready to eat. They're cooled off. I took this one out of the paper and I just want to show you how nice of a cake it is. And it has the crumb is fairly soft. It's not a real hard, sometimes those get kind of crunchy. This one stays soft, and it has a really nice coffee cake texture. Now when you use this recipe is egg-free. So sometimes when you use the egg replacements and the different compliance sugars, you'll have a little gradation in color. So we have a little bit of that. It's sort of like a little caramelized, doesn't affect the flavor at all. And it tastes really good. They're nice and moist. I think you're really gonna like them. The other option you have that I didn't mention, because so many people want egg-free products or egg-free recipes, is you can make these with eggs. All you have to do is use 3 eggs and eliminate the water. And then you probably won't have that gradation. All right, well, I'm gonna have a bite and see just what I think of the final product. And I hope that you'll come back and see me again for the next recipe. Thanks again.